week how we learned about quadratic functions. We started by learning some things about the parent function. So part A was parent function. And you know that the parent function of a quadratic is y equals x squared. The graph of that is called the parabola, or a parabola. If we talk about the parts of the graph, there are three main parts we're going to be concerned with. The first is the vertex, which is the maximum point or the minimum point, the top or the bottom, and that's a coordinate pair. B, the axis of symmetry, which is just x equals, and it's a line that's a vertical line, x equals, and we use the coordinate from above, so the coordinate from the vertex. And part C is the solutions, or the x-intercepts. Remember that an x-intercept crosses the x-axis, and in the case of how many solutions we might have, we could have one solution. That would be something like the parabola just touches the x-axis. We could have two solutions, which would be something like this, where it crosses once, twice, and those would be the two solutions. Or it could be no solutions. And that might look like this, where it's just going up all the way, and it's continuing to go up, and it never crosses the x-axis at all. Okay, when we want to solve these, this was part B, to solve these things. There are several methods of which we can do that. The first is the calculator. Can teach us a bunch about that. We're going to use just the calculator today. Then we could do factoring and the quadratic formula, which is what we're going to do tomorrow. And then the last way would be to use completing the square, which we're not going to focus on as much because I think the other methods are probably sufficient for you to know. When we want to solve these, we want to find parts A, B, and C from above. So that's what we're going to do both in the assignment today in class and on our homework tonight. Let's look at some example problems. Grab another sheet of paper. Okay. When we're looking at our examples, number 1, you will want to have your calculator out or else you're going to get real stuck real quick. F of x equals 2x squared plus 8x plus 7. That's our formula. We're going to take our calculator and put that in for y equals. We're going to graph that. And as you can see from my graph, and when I'm looking for my vertex, that's that point right there. Is it a maximum or a minimum? Well, it's a minimum because it's the very lowest point. To find the minimum, we're going to go second trace. And we're going to go to the minimum. And hit enter. We're going to find a point to the left of the bottom, to the left of the minimum. Then we're going to find a point to the right of the minimum. And it'll say guess. You're going to hit enter one more time. And that should give you your minimum, which is -2, -1. So that's your answer for A. For B, we're finding the axis of symmetry, which is x equals, and I take that from this point right here, so x equals -2. Part C, what are the solutions? We're going to go back to our graph. We're going to look at, on the x-axis, how many times it crosses. In this case, it's 2 times. So we're going to find 2 different zeros, or 2 different solutions. I'm going to start with the first one as I go from left to right. I'm going to pick a point on the left side, and then on the right side. Notice when I'm doing zeros, that should be 1 point above the x-axis and 1 point below the x-axis to give me my 0. In this case, I have -2.7, 0. For my other one, I'm going to do the process again. Second trace 0. I'm going to pick a point to the left, which in this case is on the bottom. And I'm going to pick one on the right, which in this case is on the top, and guess. And my other 0 is negative 1.3 comma 0. Okay, some troubleshooting things about this that you might run into on the homework. If it has on one of your points negative 1.3 e to the negative 10, for example, that means 0.0000000000013, which is pretty much just 0. So if it has e to the something, that's just 0, and leave that alone. All right. Also, you'll want to pick one on the left and the right of each one of these points, both when you're finding the vertex and the zeros, or else it's going to give you an error. So that's why that might happen. You may have to change your window on some of these to make it look right. And if you need help with that, you can come into tutorials or ask questions during class at an appropriate time. Let's look at some more examples. Example number 2, f of x equals x squared minus 10x plus 25. So I put that into my calculator into y equals. And graph it. That one is definitely a minimum, so I'm going to do second trace, minimum. I'm going to pick a point on my left. On this one, my arrow started, or my dot started out of view, so I had to bring it back in, which is fine, something you can do. And one to the right. Oh, let me start over. It looks like I pushed something incorrectly. To the left, to the right, and enter. And our minimum is 4.99999, 0, which I can just round, because it is close enough, to 50. That gives me part B as well. I know that x equals 5, because that's what it shows me right here. And part C, for my zeros, I can tell by looking at this that it only touches once. There's one solution. And I already know what that point is where it touches, and that's 50. I got that from part A. So I'm done with that one. Let's look at one more example. Number 3. And that's f of x equals negative 4x squared plus 24x minus 41. Got to put that into my calculator. And graph it. When I do that, I can see that my little graph is right here, and it's a maximum. So I'm going to go to second trace maximum. Pick a point on the left, pick a point on the right, and enter. And that maximum is at 3, negative 5. For my axis of symmetry, I have x equals 3. That comes from right there. And for my zeros, there isn't anywhere where it's going to cross the x-axis, so there are none. And that's the end of that example. If you're having difficulties, let me know. The assignment here is A2, is page 134, numbers 1 through 8, which are matching. Okay, so don't need to do any extra work on there, just match the letter with the number, 1 through 8. And then numbers 14, 16, 18, 20, 21, 25, and 26 are the rest of the assignment. On 14 through 26, all of those problems, I want you to do exactly what we did in the notes, which was parts A, find the vertex, part B, find the axis of symmetry, and part C, find the zeros. Don't worry about the instructions it has in the book. We'll talk about that later. For now, that's how I want you to solve this. Good luck. Let me know if you have questions.